Hi, Varun. Please take away your presentation.
Hey, thanks, Joanna. Uh, Hello, folks. I'm Varun Wadekar from NVIDIA. For the folks that don't know me, I represent the NVIDIA Tegra platforms in the community. I've been working with the trusted firmware for many years now. I think I started at version 0.2, and yeah, we've been part of the community since then. And just to give a little bit of a background, sorry, before that, if people cannot hear me or suddenly I start sounding like Bumblebee, just please let me know. The internet is a little bit flaky on my side, so I'll try to see if I can join by phone if that's the case. Okay, so getting back, initially, I mean, just to give everybody a little bit of context, we had a thread in the community where we discussed a little bit on the long term support, or I mean that was the discussion, that was how we started it, where we were thinking of, does it really make sense to have a long term support branch, a side branch, and should it be a long term support branch, should it be a security fixes only branch, should it be just a stable branch, should it be something XYZ? I mean, there were a lot of options there. So what I wanted to do here in this presentation is try to understand, since we did not have a lot of responses. I also wanted to check with people if this is of interest to everybody else, or is it just something that NVIDIA is interested in. I mean, if that's the case, then as a project, as a community, it does not make sense to take this forward. But that's what I would like to understand today. And the presentation is short by design because I wanted to just cover a lot of points. Um, the initial problems that NVIDIA as an OEM sees with the current model, and then talk through some potential proposals. So it's not this is nothing that is not final. So I mean, it's just to get some discussion started and see what people think about it, and how we should approach this. So that's how I wanted to, or that's what I wanted to talk about in this presentation. So yeah, so with that context, let's see, how do I do? Okay. Um, right. So, with that context, I just wanted to talk about, what we as an OEM see, and discuss what problems we've seen throughout these many years, moving from one branch to another, supporting all our platforms upstream and downstream, and try to see if any of that resonates with people, and also get feedback on the way to better define the problem, and then at the end hopefully discuss about some potential solutions uh, that people think that make sense. If not, you can of course go in a completely different direction, but yeah, that's what I hope to do today. Right, so this brings me to the slide where I would like to talk a little bit about why why this issue is dear to our heart. What is the motivation to have this discussion today? So some of it might be specific to NVIDIA, but please, I mean, at the end, uh, I would also like to understand how you have tackled your problems, or what other issues that you might have seen, and we can add them to this presentation later. But I mean, from NVIDIA's perspective, what we have seen is that our downstream almost always lags upstream. And I'm guessing that from some other email discussions and other tech talks, or some questions in the tech talks in the previous meetings that we have had, I get the picture that other people are also seeing this. Um, so in our case, we have a downstream that always lags upstream, and one of the main reasons is um, the upstream code base is kind of too fast for us. I mean, we cannot guarantee that we can keep up with upstream, and for obvious reasons. We Um, there is no way to figure out, what the code quality is, for example, for a given release, or how much testing has been done. Of course, there is an effort with OpenCI, and I know that there is a lot of testing that happens in the background. But as an as a partner that takes this code to production, I mean, we would, or as a project, it would be great if we have some evidence-based um, model where we publish with a given release. We also publish all the testing reports and whatever code quality reports and any other analysis that was done, XYZ. So it helps the people downstream to take this code base to production. Another thing that we have observed is all the software fixes, so be it security, performance, any other bug fixes, or any other critical issues. So all that code is always pushed to the tip. Of course, that's one of the reasons is we do not have um, a side branch or anything that is kind of a slower release on the side where these fixes can go. So that is definitely one of the reasons that all of these are applied at the tip. But then for partners like us that are on the kind of on the slower release cadence, or on this or in the slower lane, we always have to keep on monitoring upstream and see if any of the changes apply to us at whatever version we are. I mean, we can be at 1.4, 1.2, whatever, 2.0. So to make sure that these fixes are relevant to us. If they are not relevant, then if we have to cherry pick them, if they do not apply, then we apply them, productize them, go through all the testing, and all of that falls on us. So that was one of the motivation points to see if we can do that in the upstream community and have a stable or some other mechanism. And I don't want to jump to the solution here, but some kind of mechanism where we can address this problem. I think I talked about third point, but yeah, it's cost-wise for any partner or any OEM who is on this in this slower lane. It's always going to be a lot of investment to productize any public release, testing, code quality being, and also in some aspects documentation. So I think I didn't talk about documentation, but um, as a partner or as any person who's taking public release, it would be great if I can get a documentation that is valid at any given change list, not just at the release that happens 6 months down the line. Of course, that's a wish list item, but that is something that would be really helpful. We can see how to do this, but I just wanted to talk about what matters to us, and of course to other people as well, hopefully. One of the other points that we always thought about is whenever a public release is announced in the community, how do we take it, or how do we productize it and take it to our devices on day zero? Of course, that's a lofty goal, but that is something that we have always thought about in the background. Uh, we don't have an answer yet, but we have tried internally to reduce the lag between our downstream and upstream by employing various methods. But yeah, this is something that if we can address it in upstream, it's going to help not only NVIDIA, but I guess it's going to help a lot of other partners, other OEMs that take any release to production. The last point is a little bit dear to my heart. I mean, when I started on the project, I remember talking to Dan Handley from ARM, and one of the points that he said at that point was, we are one of the aims for the ARM for the trusted firmware project is that there's a lot of fragmentation in the industry. A lot of OEMs and SoC vendors have their own monitor software, their own PEE stack, that we would like to help the community, help the industry standardize things a little bit, and reduce the burden for them, and push it over to the community to so that was one of the goals when they started the project. And with all the partners and OEMs running different versions of the trusted firmware, sure, I mean, all of them, or maybe most of them, have moved over to trusted firmware. But I would really like to think, have we addressed the fragmentation issue? Because people are running different versions of trusted firmware. So, uh, if you will, there's still a little bit of fragmentation. And so all of these points led to this discussion. How do we solve this? Maybe long-term support, or another side branch. That might be one solution, but of course we should challenge ourselves to think of in any other ways we can solve these problems. So I would like to take a pause here and understand if any of this makes sense to people. Um, have you guys seen these issues, and would you like to add anything more to this? I mean, because most of this is from my experience and from NVIDIA side. So I would like to understand what other people think.
So from an ARM perspective, I too would be very interested in our various sort of platform partners that are on the call. Do you mirror NVIDIA's goals, aims, concerns? Because I guess if we're going to have a solution, it's got to be a solution that works for as many people as possible. So please pipe up if you've got any opinions here.
That's that's an interesting point, Joanna, that you brought up. Yeah, we want to come up with a solution, or it can be a mixed approach, or one solution that basically covers a lot of problems that not just NVIDIA or ARM, but most of us other platform owners are also seeing. So, okay, so let me go to the. All right, so with all of this background, these are some of the potential ways that we can try to solve this. Of course, as I said, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not the only way to do this, and but it just to get this discussion started, and hopefully people will take this as the starting point and come up with other ideas, other ways that we can try to solve these problems. Yeah, so definitely, testing. When we look at any public release, as I said, testing and investing in documentation, tests, make sure that we provide evidence. So all of that. If we invest in that direction, that would definitely be helpful. I'm guessing it would be helpful to a lot of partners. So that can be one direction where we can invest our energy and see how we can maybe keep on the same trajectory that we are on the release trajectory that we are right now, and see if moving in this direction makes sense. The one problem that I see with this is the issue that I talked about, where people are stuck at different versions, and they cannot, or they have to spend their own energy to backports, a lot of fixes, performance optimizations, and whatnot. So this is that is one area that might not be covered if we invest in this. If we just invest in this one area. Another approach would be, we think of how we can modify our release management process itself, and does it make sense to change the cadence, change some ways that we do our release management planning? Should we add some things, to make the public release a little bit robust? All these different things can be explored, and the main thing being, or the main motivation being, to get these releases out to the field as soon as possible. It doesn't make sense to have the upstream at version 2.4 where, and then some partners or some platforms still running version 1.0. That defeats the purpose. Of course, they might have their own reasons, but I mean, from the upstream community or for the project, if we can, try to reduce that gap, then that would be a good achievement. Yeah, another area that we can think about is, can we have? I mean, right now we have tags, but can we change that process a little bit so that it is easier to cherry pick or apply the fixes directly to those tags? Does it make sense to, instead of having tags, should we do something else so that these changes are readily available or can be easily applied? I mean, we can think about ways to do this. And yeah, one other thing is documentation. When, as I said, documentation being valid at any given change list is going to be very, very helpful to anybody. I mean, even during the development process, we have a release cadence of 6 months, but between those 6 months, if we can come up with a way to make sure that the documentation, I mean, when I say documentation, it can be the design, it can be API reference manual, it can be the porting guide, user guide. Right now we have so many, documents in the tree. So, all of that being valid at any given change list. From what I understand, and of course it's a 10,000 feet view, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, the documentation creation process runs parallel to the source code creation process. So, if we can align in some way to make sure that both of them, instead of being parallel and running in their own sandbox, if both of them can be aligned, and you can automatically, I mean, just an example, we automatically generate the documentation from the source code itself. So at any given change list, anybody can run a makefile rule and get the documentation for that change list. So, again, it's a wish list item, but that is something that might help if we can keep the documentation aligned with the code. That might help with the porting issue, with the porting problems, and help partners come up or support the latest release right from the get-go. And yeah, of course, I mean, the last point is, does it really make sense to have a side branch, or I mean, I call it a side branch, but maybe a software release that runs at a slower cadence than we have right now. Just as an example, I've added 2 years, and I've used the LTS strategy from the Ubuntu community, and just went through how they do it. So that's why I've added that reference here for people to use that as a reference and start thinking in that direction if required. So yeah, so does it make sense to have that side branch, which we can call it anything: stable, security fixes only, or a long-term support, or something else? We can definitely decide what the scope of that release can be and how we should proceed to solve the problems for everybody. But yeah, I mean, all these points is what we as NVIDIA were thinking about. Of course, I do not claim that this solves everybody's problems. So again, I would like to hear from all the other platform owners to see how how we can add to it. Does this make sense, or should we scrap all of it and move in a completely new direction? That is also fine. Yeah, so I in all my presentations, I always like to include one slide where I call for action, or just an action items slide where people know, okay, what are the takeaways from this. So I want to call out all the platform owners and ARM and any other partners who use this code base to help us define the problem. First of all, let's try to get the scope right and see what other issues are there. So once we have that laundry list of things or the problems that we have to solve, then we can invest in different ways how that can be solved. And definitely, try to, or hopefully all these discussion starts a conversation as to how we should solve this, that helps everybody in the community take the latest release to production on day 0. And I guess as a result of this, there would be some conversations that people need to have internally, because if we decide to move in this direction, there would be some investment. But when I say investment, I'm not talking about investment in terms of money, but investment in terms of time. Maybe people will have to spend more time to make sure that we have this stable code base. Investment in testing, investment in CI. I know Joanna has been talking about OpenCI, so investment in how we can use OpenCI, or how platform owners can hook up into the OpenCI and try to solve some of these issues. But yeah, I mean, all of these conversation has to be had internally within the platform owners organizations to see if this makes sense, if this is of interest, and then we can reconvene uh, in few weeks and see where we are and how we should move ahead with this. So yeah, I think those were all the things that I wanted to talk about. I definitely did not want to talk about how we solve this, or just talk about long-term support branch or any other solution to solve this. I just wanted to create this this as kind of a thinking, a platform where people take all of this information, think about it, and then we as a community come up with one solution or multiple solutions, or sparks different ideas. So that was my aim. And at this point, I think I would like to see if there are any questions, any comments.
Hey, Varun. It's Jimmy from ARM.
Hey, Jimmy.
I'm pretty sure, and I just confirmed, I think, that we do have a way to build documentation from an arbitrary commit in TFA. Specifically, you can do make doc. You need
okay,
Sphinx
nice.
installed, so perhaps that's. But aside from dependencies, I think that's good news.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and when I said that, I was talking about not just the architecture, but also an API reference manual, if you will, where people can just go to browse through the manual and see what each function does. Kind of if you have looked at the Oxygen style of commenting, so at the top of every function you have the expectations, input, outputs, short description about the functions, so something of that. But if make docs is the rule that gives us this information, then yeah, I think we are in a good place already.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that it builds everything that you can see on read the docs right now from the current commit.
Okay, nice. All right. Any other questions? It would be interesting to hear from platform owners what they think about this.
So this is Joanna here. I'm particularly trying to be silent just to give people opportunities to say things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking since there are no questions, maybe this doesn't make sense at all. That might be one conclusion, or people are still thinking, and hopefully they'll come back with questions, comments, feedbacks later. I would like to believe it's the latter.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can. Yes, yes. I mean, we can also continue this on the mailing list afterwards if people want to come back. Partners, if they're not ready to comment or give opinions at this particular moment in time.
Hey, Varun, this is Matteo speaking. So I'm not one of the platform owner, I'm afraid.
No worries.
No, I just wanted to just maybe restate our position from an ARM point of view.
Yeah.
Clearly, ARM is definitely interested. We have a vested interest in wider adoption and anything that can make the adoption of TFA easier and the deployability of TFA easier for our partners. I would just particularly caught by one statement that you made. If you go back 2-3 slides.
Okay, I'm just okay. This is how I go ahead.
Here, this one, motivation. So the last point, right? The point around fragmentation.
Yeah.
Yes, we recognize this is still a problem for the industry. So ARM totally recognizes that. Trusted firmware is still very much a fragmented space. So the EL3 firmware is still fragmented, I'm afraid. We would like to believe it's not, but I'm afraid it is. If I just make a comparison in the Android world, Google usually complains that there is an Android version different for every device, and that's the reason why they're moving into the JKI concepts in the Android world. It's fair to say that ARM is trying to move in a similar direction also for the firmware layer. So with the introduction of the security L2 exception, for example, exception layer, we like to believe that people would have more reason to keep their EL3 more standard, more clean up and generic. And that would help, hopefully, defragmenting that space. But having said that, from a deployment perspective, I can totally see the argument that if we don't have stable releases or if we cannot backport security fixes, it becomes just harder and harder. I'm not saying it's unfeasible. I'm pretty sure it's doable. And I worked myself in a product company for years, so it's doable, but it's an increased effort, which is multiplied by every single partner. So I can totally see an opportunity for putting that effort in common. And the key here is really, it has to be in common. So no company can just keep going in maintaining long-term downstream implementation of EL3 firmware, which is completely deviated or divergent from the upstream one. This is probably still affordable today. It will become harder and harder in a world with security L2. And if we look at the future direction of the technologies, it will become even more harder in the future. So just to say, totally support this point. I can totally see the connection with defragmentation of this space. We are totally supportive on the initiative. Just has to be a community effort. Yeah, and I'm shutting up now. See if anyone else has something more to say.
Yeah, well, Eric from ST, I can give a word as well. It's a platform vendor. Yeah, I think it's a very valid point, and it's completely true, and we share all what's like. Now, from our side, situation is not yet burning, so we can manage to align on tag where needed. But let's say mid or long term, yeah, I completely share the latest remark from Matteo. First of all, there is yeah, TFA is not the only project facing this kind of issue or question. Yocto, for instance, had to fix or find a solution to fix these kind of things before launching their LTS version not so long ago, a few months ago. So yeah, probably the project members will have to address this and find a way. And there is not many solutions. Let's be clear. Either we find a way between the community and project members to organize ourselves to handle this maintenance, or we need to find a way to fund it. And she's as basic as that. And yeah, we'll have to address this, I think.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. I think one interesting point that was brought up is, if we can use this as the basis for everything under the trustedfirmware.org umbrella, that would be, worthwhile discussion to have. I mean, Matteo made some interesting points about SEL2, and it's good that that a lot of people share this. It's good to hear that feedback. But yeah, as I said, I mean, this is just to start the discussion, and hopefully we will arrive at one way, or at least start on a journey to come up with some or multiple ways to solve these issues.
So maybe if I can suggest some practical next steps, definitely keep raising this in the TFA mailing list, but maybe it would be beneficial to maybe create kind of a page on our wiki sections under Fabricator. Pretty sure Joanna can point you in the right directions. And then we've done something similar with Sandrine when Sandrine, created the new proposal for maintainership. So we kind of created a wiki page for brainstorming, raising the topic, raising the problem, maybe fleshing down a possible solution, and then letting people comment on that. We can definitely bring this to the attention of the steering committee of TF.org. If there is an interest also from other projects, like, I don't know, TFM, OPT, or other projects part of TF.org. And yeah, we can encourage people to just go and comment and propose their ideas on I guess maybe for this case, a wiki page works best than just the mailing list, and just my suggestion. Yeah, I think that this could probably be a good next step forward.
Yes, Matteo, I mean, I can help support that. If either get the page created or when Varun or whoever wants to take the lead on this discussion, how to do these things.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. Anything to, move this topic ahead. Yeah, I'm all ears.
I mean, on maybe a few sides, because I mean, it has been something that we're aware of and thinking about, and that some of the changes that we're doing, in that you mentioned it, the OpenCI, that we appreciate that a lot of the build and the testing is opaque to many of the contributors, and that's the whole reason for the OpenCI. Very much, what ARM can do in our internal CI is test on, software models and the Juno platform, which is what we have available to us. But we're hoping with the OpenCI, there'll be a lava farm that partners can, if they want to engage, allow their platforms to be used as part of the CI, which may give them some more confidence in the status of how well the master is building. If we go for a long-term service support, if that is something that goes forward at some point, I'm sure similar things can be done and run on those platforms there. You know, other architectural changes as well as the secure EL2 was the work that some of the team have done on the use of DTBs rather than header files in trying to build a generic firmware BL31. All something to try to simplify the code, or more common code anyway, that partners can depend on, even if the particular device trees may be different between partners. IO, it's on my list of things to do a session on the OpenCI in the state and what we're trying to achieve with it, the types of tools we're trying to bring. There's things like code coverage which again will help. I'm aware that when we do a tagged release, we don't really generate any reports beyond the changelog, and part of that is, you know, a lot of our internal tracking of tasks and things. It is difficult to share them because they're on internal ARM tools. But I do have a desire to try to generate a test report for the release. I would like to point out that, you know, our goal is to try to make the tipper tree as high quality as possible, which is why we tried. You know, I think it's the last estimate was like 94%, I think, of all the tests that we have are automated. Appreciate they're all internal automated, and until the OpenCI is deployed, the partnerships and the members of the project aren't necessarily visible of all of them, apart from when we tell folks that things have failed in a patch review. The actual scripts that drive a lot of the internal CI are now open as repositories. Perhaps that's something I ought to share with people, so people can look at the tests. You know, they are downloadable, and people can try and rerun the tests that we have. So we're trying to take steps to support you, Varun, and all the partners, and not just give you source code, but give you other capabilities to ensure that, you know, what you do with developing, you know, the production versions for your platforms. We do as much production type testing and production type work in the upstream, which hopefully in the longer term will help everyone. But ultimately, you know, what this project delivers is source code, and it's, you know, it's all the partners who build the binaries today. And the other thing I guess I ought to say is sometimes, you know, although you don't necessarily have at the moment until the OpenCI is done sort of visibility into ARM's CI process, you know, we as the general projects don't have a lot of insights into how each of the partners builds their products. You know, each of you have got, you know, you see the reference platform or the reference release. Some of you, you know, take advantage of upstreaming aspects of your platforms to help maintain things going forward, such that we don't unnecessarily break people when we're introducing changes, because we do, as part of our CI, do try to build every platform. But of course, we don't know what else you guys do, you know, in your production processes to actually build the real firmware for your particular devices. You know, all we can do is, from the sort of visibility that we have with the source code, which has a lot of build options, and each of you use either all or maybe not all, you use different variations of the different features that you want for the different hardware capabilities that your platforms have. But I would say, sort of Matteo sort of hinted, I think, you know, our spirit is willing to try to, you know, make the production of production-ready firmware from the TFA project, you know, where we would like to see that as well, you know, make that as easy as possible.
Thanks, Joanna. I just wanted, you know, to make a point that when initially when I talked about these the problems for an OEM I was not trying to criticize any of the, the way that we do it in upstream. I really appreciate all the effort that goes into the release. I know that there is a lot of testing that happens, a lot of verification, and a lot of effort that already goes into the current source code. So I really appreciate all the effort that goes in there. And apologies if you feel that I was criticizing any of
Oh,
that.
no,
I mean,
no,
that
not
was
at
not
all.
the.
And apologies if my soapbox talk sounded like that, because it wasn't intent. I just wanted to sort of try to give an overview of how we see the world and how we're trying to overlap with everybody who's a member on the project.
If I could perhaps take this in a slightly different direction, I think comments on the documentation building from master and getting Doxygen or something similar as part of the source code could be taken up as a totally independent issue to move it forward faster. Yeah.
Totally agree, Jimmy. I think solving this, there isn't one big magic bullet that's going to solve this for everyone. I think there's just lots of different areas where we can make improvements to better build a deliverable from the project that people find easier to consume.
Yeah, agreed. I was more thinking we could have a separate discussion on the mailing list to track the documentation issues.
Divide and conquer. I do agree. We identify areas that we can move forward on and try to drive each of them independently, and hopefully things will come together and we'll be in a better place in the future.
So Varun, this is Bipin. I have a question on the software fixes never available for the older releases. So typically, how many releases back you would ideally look for in terms of like software fixes? And I'm assuming the software fix you're meaning the firmware fix, any security issues, erratum fixes, all of them. Is that what you actually cover with the software fix? And also how many releases typically in the product cycle you will have, say, in the field? Because I am trying to understand the extent of the problem.
Right. Yeah. So when I said software fixes, yeah, I meant everything like security, vulnerability, all the mitigations for those, any errata fixes, any performance fixes, or any other general bug fixes. I mean, all of those I wanted to cover under that one umbrella. So those are the things that I was looking at. And for the other part of the question, I mean, honestly, our release or our the devices that are out in the field, it's so fragmented. I mean, internally we have a lot of fragmentation issues as well. I mean, this should not come as a surprise, but yeah, we have some devices that are as old as 1.x, 1.2. I mean, you can replace x with any number, and we have at least some release branch that is using that code. So but there is no single answer as to how many releases back we should provide these fixes. I mean, that was one of the things that I tried to cover in these solutions. So if we have a slower code base, I mean, just as an example, if we have a slower lane that follows the upstream, maybe then we don't have to really worry about pushing the fixes to or making them available for all the previous releases. We can think about these slower branch and maybe one or two, whatever cadence works for everybody, one or two releases that get these software fixes, or maybe just the previous stable release get the fixes, whatever works for everybody. But yeah, I mean, I don't have one answer that will help us. I guess internally we do have an action item to consolidate and make sure that we reduce fragmentation, but because of the problems that I already talked about, it's it's harder. I mean, it's improved in the past, but it's still hard.
Yeah, and the whole thread of, you know, how far should we go in the past to fix releases? It's very tricky. I mean, I see the same problem happening in the kernel. I receive every month or so requests for backporting stuff in older kernels and older LTSs, which we don't want to support any longer. I guess it all depends to the deployment model and the life cycle that people have with their products, right? And it's a balance between the longest life cycle and the amount of effort which is required to bring things to older releases. So it's always a balancing exercise, and it's never going to be perfect. One could start just with, you know, supporting the existing stable and abandoning a stable when there is a new release, or you can add incrementally support, you know, last stable and then last before last, and then you keep adding as you have more bandwidth to cope with all the chaos that generates. But no, I mean, as you say, there is no silver bullet answer. It's a balancing exercise. I guess for a project that starts brand new, probably it's better to, you know, start with baby steps and see how it goes. But I'm just speculating, really.
No, I think yeah, all those are really good points. But yeah, I mean, one important aspect is what works for everybody. That's the question that we need to answer. So whatever can get us to cover, you know, most of the problems and most of the platforms, yeah, we do that once we have a consensus. Yeah, and as you said, Matteo, it's a tricky question. I mean, people would always, you know, want you to keep on supporting branches that are 10 years old, 5 years old. So, and at some point we will have to draw a line in the sand and say that, you know, at least they're trying to do this.
Yep.
It is very difficult. I mean, are we tracking TFA tagged releases? Is, you know, because, you know, we, you know, the project, you know, it's only you partners know which ones that you base your product trees off of, or is it based around a particular, you know, ARM v8 architectural level that your needs? I mean, what we're doing with the Tipper-Tree, of course, is trying to, you know, as new architectural changes come down, we want to make sure that there is some degree of or if not full implementation support of those features in the code base. And of course, I appreciate, you know, products in the field, you know, they don't magically change. You've got to do new hardware solutions to, you know, be based on those new ARM v8 capabilities if you want to make use of them. So it's a balance, perhaps. You know, what is the majority of partners base on, you know, from an ARM architectural perspective? That's not to say we would slow down, of course, on what we're trying to do to try and support the latest, but if the latest isn't of use, or it's in the way, or it's it just muddies the water for the support of you know, what your real products are based on, that I can understand, you know, the code base can complicate matters.
I mean, if we keep the comparison with the kernel, the kernel usually creates an LTS every year, and so it's not that every single target release becomes an LTS, right? The kernel mostly have one LTS per year, per calendar year. And then people align over time, they have aligned their product launches mainly or roughly around kernel LTSs. Then clearly the major consumer, which is the Android kernel, it's kind of a, you know, it's a forcing function, but it's also true that the Android release cycle also influence which LTS gets declared. So it's a mutual influence in there. But that's not unreasonable, right? So you have one tick every calendar year where people can align with their product downstream developments, knowing mostly in a predictable way there will be a kernel LTS somewhere in the autumn of each year. And it's totally unrelated with respect of the collection of features. Well, then it becomes the rush for making the features into that LTS because you want it in that LTS. So one argument drives the other. So the feature readiness drives the LTS, and the LTS drives the feature readiness and completeness for that LTS.
So we had a session not too long ago that Mark and Bippin gave. We tried to give an indication of what we do when we do a tagged release, and how we do rely on the CI, to try to automate as many, if not all, the tests that we can. And it is a gathering point, really. I mean, the tipperary should always, the CI should always be running and should always be passing. But what we try to do around a tagged release is make sure the documentation is totally up to date, in case there's anything missing that slip through. A few more manual tests, and we do run everything, all the manual tests as well as the CI on a particular build. But we do it like a train model, really. We try to do every 6 months. We do that give something partners can aim at, because the tipperary, it changes multiple times a day, of course. So we just try to give partners something that they can center around. Whether we turn one of them into a long-term service release, whether we do them more frequently, whether we only do one a year, if it is the 2 tagged releases too much for partners. We were just trying to give a balance here. So we've only got 4 minutes left. So great discussion, everyone. But I suspect we're about to run out of time. What I suggest we do is take it to the mailing list. Varun, if you want to open up a discussion, share anything you want there, so that people can continue talking about it. We can talk about putting together a wiki page, like Matteo suggested, that thoughts can be gathered and proposals can be put together. More than happy to continue discussion to try to improve everybody's life in this space. So you're the main presenter, Varun. Any sort of final thoughts you've got from what you've heard today?
No, I think we had a really good discussion, and initially, I wanted to present what our problems are and how we are, just try to get a sense of what people think about them. Looks like there is, I mean, our concerns are shared by other partners as well, and other people in the community. So, I think that was good to hear. And I agree with the next step forwards with the wiki, and try to get more proposals, more ideas. I think that should help us move ahead. And if required, down the line, we can also have another session where we talk about the how. I mean, we talked about the what now. We can talk about the how at that point, and try to crystallize any plans that we might have at that point.
Most definitely, things like the idea Jimmy had with Oxygen or whatever, if that was something we wanted to pursue. I mean, that's a separate project on its own, but all these smaller projects will hopefully move things forward. Yeah.
So I mean, that's all I had. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Thanks for listening to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other final comments from anyone? Otherwise, I'll let you all go, and I will publish the recording so that if any of your compatriots in your companies couldn't join, that they can at least listen to the presentation and the discussion. And if Varun, if you could send me a PDF, if you're happy to do that, I will share that on the site as well on trustedfirmware.org.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not hearing anything from anyone, so I'm going to stop the recording and look forward to speaking to you all at the next meeting. And on the mailing list, of course. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.